And my mom was like, no, she's going to university. What are you talking about marriage? Like, it's not going to happen. And it was really encouraging to see that I wouldn't have to convince her, let me go to school. She was just going to do that.
The course of Akosua Ombonga's life was always plotted with education and choice, thanks to her mother. Growing up in Ghana, Akosua saw how issues affecting women and girls could easily be ignored. Now, as an advocate for gender equity and empowerment, she fights for social justice and uses her platform to confront issues with community centered solutions. Thank you for joining Lynne Foley, host of Remarkable Women Powerful Stories, as we hear from Akosua about her journey.
Recently, I just came back from Ghana on Sunday, and I went back to my old neighborhood. And I was very grateful, and it was also strangely, I was a bit scared when we went inside my old compound, and I stood there and I absolutely didn't want to be there. And I'm like, let's leave, let's go. But my early years in Accra, if I would say, with my family has always been a strong unit. When I say my family, I'm talking about my mom and my brothers. I have two brothers. We've always been tight knit, strong unit, easygoing people that find ways to laugh out of the weirdest and scenarios where you think should break you down. We just try to find light in it, and that's always kept us going. um I grew up in a place where, and the name of the community is called Zamramaline, and I always say it's updated, or upscale, if you can. It's an upscale slum because we have tarred roads, and sometimes we get water. And so that's where I grew up in, and it was my family. Well, what would I say? It was always a struggle sometimes, like, getting money here and there. But my mom used to teach in a catering school, and it was good. And my dad had traveled at that time when we were growing up. He was living in Italy, and so being having funds from him from time to time, and my mom working was bearable for some time. And then something happened. My mom lost her job around the same time my dad lost his. Then we sold everything. Everything my mom could find, she would sell. And that was around the time where, like, things got a bit tricky with my father. And it seems that when things got difficult, like, he bolted and
Ah.
left us to deal with the backlash. um and I saw my mother really do everything that she could to ensure that her kids made it through. And I think that has really shaped me. And there are good sides to it, being having a strong character to look at and to look up to. But also there's also that side where, you always want to be strong no matter what, which might not be so good, which I've come to learn. But yes, that really shaped us, especially me, and I guess molded me into who I am today.
Yes, your mother had to pick up and just do what needed to be done at the point that your father left, as you said. So,
Yeah.
And upscale slum is an interesting way of describing where you lived. And for a lot of people, it's, imagining not living without water, for example, is really hard to do. So I hear that was part of your upbringing. You talked about this strong influence of your mother in many areas, and particularly in her drive for education, for you to all be educated. Can you share with me about how all of that happened and how you made your study choices? Because I know that's a very interesting story about how you chose to study and how you ended up studying what you did in the end.
Yeah. So, when things get difficult for families, usually the first thing, or one of the first things that happen would be like, taking your kids out of the current school they're in or changing their school to something that you can afford, something much more cheaper. But I didn't see my mother didn't do that. She kept us in the school that we're going to, which was a good school, at least at the time we were going, and did all she can or all she could to make up the money to pay for the education. And she would encourage us. My mom didn't go to university. She doesn't have a degree.
Mm.
She would encourage us and she will push us and she wanted us to get, those degree, all of us, me, my brothers. There was never a time where she was thinking maybe a way out would be for Akosua to meet some rich man and marry me off. There was no question. She was going to push me through school. Um, and I remember there was one time I came back from high school, from senior high school. I was in boarding school at that time in Holy Child. And I had just finished and I came back home and we're walking together, my mom and I. We looked like sisters if you was to see the two of us walking together. And this man comes up to us. We know him, like, he's in the community and all of that. And he goes like, oh, now you finished school. So the next thing is marriage. Eh? And my mom goes like, no, she's going to university. What are you talking about marriage? Like, it's not going to happen. And it was really encouraging to see that I wouldn't have to convince her, let me go to school. She was just going to do that, and she was going to force herself in whatever ways. It later in life, it took a toll on her because my mom was just like doing work she was not supposed to be doing at the time, inhaling fumes, all of that from like baking bread, selling food around, walking long distances, washing dishes. She did a lot. um, and so that really influenced that. And then I remember like I trusted my mom so much with making choices on what I could do in school, and she she chose what I would study in senior high school. So she went to my school to meet my teachers, and my teachers who taught me said, I would be great in the sciences. I'm really good in the sciences. And then she met my headmistress, and my headmistress said that, yes, I'm great, like I'm a good student, but she thinks that I should choose to do home economics so that it would be easy for me to get my top choice senior high school. And so my mom went with the advice of the headmistress because in her mind, she wants her child to go to the top school. So whatever was going to maximize my ability to do it, she was going to do it. So, and the thought was that once I get in with home economics, then I could change and then do science. And I was like, okay, sure. If that's what you want me to do, that's what I'll do. So we get to school and then I write the exam for me to be able to change, my qualifications. I don't find my name for some reason. I never change into the sciences. I end up doing home economics. And I end up liking it, and I did really, really well in it. And then I finished, and then it was time for university choices as well. So I go back to my mom, what do you think I should do? And then she chooses the courses for me. I'm like, okay, sure. If you think that's what I should do, I'll do it. And then I go to school and I do it, and I end up graduating top of my class, and winning an award for it. So she really charted my course and the course of my life, and it was almost like just me on the ride. But I did participate, doing really well at what she thought I could do well in.
So what degree did you end up with?
So I ended up with a Bachelor of Science, ironically.
Yes.
A Bachelor of Science in Family and Consumer Sciences, with a specification in Family and Child Studies.
So in a weird way, you ended up sort of where you thought you might have at the beginning.
Honestly, if I would be honest, at the very beginning of all of like choosing courses and all of that as a teenager, I really didn't even know where I would be or where I wasn't like, I was somebody that could do anything that was thrown at her. So if you wanted me to be a doctor, I can do it. If you want me to be a lawyer, I could do it. Um, and so I really didn't have what I did know I wanted to do. And I kept on telling my mom, even up to now, is I wanted to be a philanthropist. And then she would tell me, well, to be a philanthropist, you have to do work. And so you have to work somewhere that you can be a philanthropist. And I knew what a philanthropist was because we would watch the news. I would see people like philanthropist and all of that. And then I was like, okay. And then I watched the news and I saw Kofi Annan and he was the UN Secretary General. And I said, you know what? Okay, you want me to do something? I'm going to become the UN Secretary General. And so like that's what I want to do. There is really no pathway. Like if you go into if you had a job fair or like a school day where people come and talk, a career day, nobody's gonna tell you the courses to take to become the UN Secretary General because it's
No.
path, right? There is no like straight way to get it into the UN to become the UN Secretary General. So there really wasn't. So like in all of my mind, I was okay, I'm gonna become the UN Secretary General and then I'll be a philanthropist as well. So whatever you want me to do, I'll do. I was thinking.
So, well, so let's talk about where you are on that pathway to be the UN Secretary General. So back in 2016, you you spoke at the Seventh African Conference on Sexual Health and Rights, and you've been speaking up and standing up for sexual and reproductive rights and laws to prevent child marriage ever since that time. What's motivated you to become a strong activist, and particularly in that area?
Particularly because of something that happened to a girl in my where I used to live. So she had finished senior high school like I had done, and then when she came back home, they told her there was no money for her to further her education. And so what they did was to marry this really young girl off to a way older man who was a carpenter living in a different region, all the way in a place called Takra in the central region of Ghana.
Mm.
Um, and that disturbed me a lot. And outside of that, there were things that were happening like around me. And as a young girl, I knew it wasn't right. I knew, it was like as a teenager, adolescent in school, all of that, as I could see things happening, I knew like this wasn't right. Like there were girls that would grow up in where I used to live and they wouldn't further the education. They'll end up married, they'll end up with children or something. And I was like, this shouldn't happen, right? But before I got into university, I didn't know that like you could start like activism. I didn't know anything about activism, advocacy. I just knew that this was wrong. So once I got into college and I had these roommates that um pulled me along really because they were older than me and said they were going for a meeting, Planned Parenthood Association of Ghana meeting, PPAG, and they're like, come along with us. And I was like, okay, sure, I'm not doing anything. Let me go and sit and see what you guys were saying. So when I went for the meeting and people were talking and that, I realized that, oh, see, you can actually, speak up or do something about this. And in addition to that, from a friend of mine had also around that time contracted HIV. And she was really going through it in terms of the way people were treating her, even when she went to go and get her medications. So that was also a disturbance. And so to be in that meeting and to see all that was happening and hear these people, I was like, wow, okay, that means we can actually do something. And these people are actually already doing something about it. So why don't you get involved? And so from that first meeting, I was hooked and yeah, been doing that ever since.
You have. So one of the key areas that I know you're very active in is trafficking. And the sort of trafficking that I know you talk to me about, it's probably not terribly well understood in many countries of the world because we have a particular view of trafficking, but it happens in so many forms. So I'm wondering if you're willing to share some of the personal experiences of yourself and other young girls and women in your communities and the extent of the problem?
So if, up until like now, I think ever since I got married, I've really been like quiet in spaces. I haven't really like done any advocacy work or spoken it up. And it's because I've been doing a lot of reflection and
Mm,
introspection and really seeing for myself, like are my what's really happening. Sometimes you just need to take a step back and see things through the lens of yourself and not like the lens of, everything that's happening around you. Um, and so during this time, I have just begun to do a lot of reflection. And I realized that so the reason I even like I'm thinking of trafficking now and it really bothers me and disturbs me, and I've been doing a lot of looking into it is because something as subtle, like for me after I finished high school, it was like just, oh, there's this woman that's in the community. Why don't you go and work with her? And to start working with her and then realizing certain things, like certain things like, oh, go into this person's office, like it's really late at night. I need this and that from the individual. And he likes you, so why don't you go into the office and try to get this for me? And I realized what was happening then is that I'm I'm being pimped out. Without my like I'm being pimped out without my knowledge. And I was wise enough not to enter just to hide myself. But there's so much of this happening around us. It doesn't look
mm,
like a traditional way of trafficking where you have somebody transport you into a different country.
mm,
There are people that have like people that they respect in the community,
mm,
taking children out of like people's homes because their parents want a better life for their kids. Their parents don't have means and ways of fending for them. And these people are given promises to say that I can take your children and then we put them to work here and they can make some money. Well, put them through school. I will pay for this. I will pay for that. Do this. Don't worry. I'll take care of them. And
mm,
your kids unknowingly end up sometimes even right, you're in the same country, but they end up maybe in Accra and they're begging on the streets. That's what they're using them for. And they're abusing them and then misusing them. And so there's so much to this issue of trafficking. And yeah, I really do think that there needs to be some spotlight on it.
mm. So talk in a moment how you intend to do that. Can I take you back a little bit? Back before you were married, etc., you were working with the UNFPA. And I know during that time you also had the chance to speak at the 75th anniversary commemoration of the General Assembly. So you did get yourself to the UN.
Yes, I did.
You did get yourself to the UN.
So
So,
I'll probably go back too. So
oh, well, it's early. It's early. You can go back anytime, I'm sure, and with the work that you're doing. So at that time, what was it you were speaking about? And in your work at UNFPA, where do you think your work and advocacy made the greatest impact?
oh, I think there was this one project, and I did so much. But there was this one project that I did, and I would say it was my country representative, Mr. Niyo Jolape, that really pushed me on that because prior to that, I hadn't like designed such a project of that size. I hadn't managed finance funds of that size. And he trusted in me as a person, but also me as a professional to take that project and run with it. And this was during COVID. And we designed a project to provide support to 500 Kayaye. So the Kayaye are women that are in most of Ghana's markets and they carry loads. So if you came to the market and you bought a lot of stuff, they will carry all of that stuff for you on their heads for, a fee. Sometimes they don't even give you a price. You just give them whatever you think you can afford.
Mm,
And so for these women, they live in such poor circumstances. And can you imagine somebody whose livelihood is on your coming to the market and the market's being closed now, and so that means there's no money coming. And for them, daily, they have to pay for the space that they sleep in. And these are not huge spaces, or like in dilapidated buildings, housing, like it's just bad. So most of them don't even have the money to pay for that space to sleep in. And so they're sleeping in the open, they're being abused, they're being harassed. We lost one of the Kaye in the process to an accident in the market, and another one was raped as we were doing this project. And to provide that support for them for 6 months, and to provide them with health insurance, to help them register, to pay for the registration, do all of that for them, provide them with food, sanitary hygiene materials and all of that during the time. It was so impactful. And working on that project and being able to provide such help to these women over the course, it was, and we also provided them with skills, so soap making, all kinds of things that they could do with their hands. And to see the transformation that it did, like at the end of the project, some of the women started their businesses, some of them went back home. They just felt more empowered and they had strengthened themselves. And for me, it's not even the impact that, sits with me. It's one scene that I have in my head from the project. I was coming in into the project site one day, and I had wrapped my head like they do, because most of them are Muslim women. And I was going inside, and then some of them were shouting, they call me sister, Sister Akos. And so they called out to me, Sister Akos, you're looking really nice. And they're speaking true with me, but what they meant in English is, you're looking really nice. You wrapped up your hair like us. I was like, yes, I felt like doing that today. And I just love that. And like, I'm way younger than these women, but project, we just developed such rapport. And I think that relationship, even for some of them, was life transforming, because I'll have some of them just call me sometimes and just talk to me, just finding out how am I doing. And I really love that relationship that was built. And so, yeah, I'd say that one project was just amazing.
So do you think as a result of that work you and your colleagues were doing, it was also about hope? Was it about hope? Was it about dreams? Or was it just helping them have a slightly better life through what you were offering?
Essentially, it was providing them with what they needed during that time that COVID had taken from them.
Yep.
Providing them with, the basics that they needed, rice, oil, those kind of things. But more than that, is showing them that there was a different life that they could have outside of this. There's a different way they could dream. Like they could go to school. It wasn't far-fetched, and some of them did. They could start their own businesses outside of like carrying loads. It's possible. And yeah, and also, yeah, so I'll say yes, hope, but really it's offering them a different way of dreaming. When they go back at night and they're lying down, is to see that, hey, I can be something else, I can do something else, and I am capable.
So it's building the self-esteem and the confidence as well inside the person, and giving them that hope, the ability to carry it out. Can I just move on to something a bit broader? As you know, Zonta International focuses a lot on how we raise awareness and advocate to eliminate gender-based violence, child marriage, ensuring women's rights are human rights. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on what has to happen in society and through government policy to get there a little bit faster to eliminate this violence, because I know how I feel about the fact that I'm at this stage of my life and we're nowhere near where we need to be, and I can't imagine how you feel. So have you got any thoughts on what else?
I think what else we can do, I mean, to be real and address the fact that we have in a broad sense, and in most countries, governments that are concerned about dollars and cents, is to put the dollar and cent value on gender-based violence. And because then once we do that, it pushes that up on the priorities. Because for now, like a governor is sitting down, president, policymaker, and
Mm,
you know, things that seemingly are more important. And the gender-based violence is seen as a woman issue.
mm,
Women issues are not necessarily financially like draining us, right? If a woman
mm,
gets raped or abused, it doesn't take money from the coffers. In fact, really, most women don't even report the cases. So
mm,
our public, facilities are not being used. They're not going to the police, whatever. So if we can put the dollars and cents to it to show that, see, this is the economic breakdown of this problem. This is what it's
mm,
costing us financially as a country. This is what it's costing us economically as a country. This is how much
mm,
far back it's setting us back in the past in terms of development. Then I think that there would be a different and a more urgent response, because there was one language that we were using during COVID, and we're talking about how, and I think that currently still that language is
mm,
still being used, but we're talking about how gender-based violence is a silent pandemic. And
mm,
it is. It's an ongoing silent pandemic. But why is it silent though? Because it's not in front of anybody on even on the news unless there is something really gruesome that happens,
mm,
and that's when we put it up there. But it happens every single day. And the question is, why do we still see this? Why are policies sometimes so weak? Why are laws not addressing certain things? Why are people not being put into prison because they went ahead and they broke the laws? And we saw that recently in Ghana, where publicly it's publicized child marriage happening and nothing is done to the culprits because of tradition. So
mm.
there needs to be a different way that we start to talk, not in terms of, the way that we talk as development people, but perhaps we should start talking as economic people.
And does that then draw? I spoke to someone recently who is strong in feminist economics, and it's about how women's work isn't counted, women's work isn't valued, women's issues is, and what you're talking about here, I think, is that we're not counting the effect on the economy of
Yes,
women who are affected by, in particular, gender-based violence. We don't have the statistics and the data and the information to
absolutely.
go, oh, well, maybe we should do something about this more quickly and with
Right.
a lot more effort. Yes. And if I just roll on from there a little bit, you mentioned to me previously that in Ghana in particular, it's really difficult raising money for such things. You talked a moment about money has to be put there, and we've talked about philanthropy a little bit earlier on. So, and we often, governments rely on philanthropy an awful lot in this space. So in Ghana, what seems to be the issue and the problem there with donor funds and philanthropy?
Cool. Well, we begin with this situation. Maybe I'll just talk about, our experience with the Pell Safe Haven and getting funds for it. It's really tough. It's really, really tough. To get funds, to get people interested. For example, corporate Ghana would you would see a lot of sponsorships for pageant shows, and because there are returns there, because you'd have the logo up and all of that, and people would want your product. You would see a lot of sponsors and pouring into other things that have nothing to do, like they might be good causes, like good things. I mean, pageant shows are okay, entertainment shows are all right. um one of the all of these things that we watch on TV, reality shows, whatever, but you still go to the same companies and you might not be able to raise money for a shelter because why? It doesn't bring in as much returns. We've had some really fantastic people that have believed in the vision of the Pearl Safe Haven and have given to us, but this is because they were individuals at the helm of affairs that understood the work that we were doing, that had passion for the work that we're doing, that had desire, that they didn't see it as a woman problem. And so we're able to advocate for, people to pour their money into us. But if you go into certain spaces that is very male forward and male at the helms of affairs, again what we're looking at is return on investment. right? And so it's hard to pitch that, and it's hard to just convince and say, hey, this work needs to be done because somebody needs to be saved. And I think that's one of the problems and one of the issues really in terms of generating funding and generating philanthropy for um, gender-based violence and its related work.
Thanks very much, Akosua. I know that you're working towards perhaps publishing a book in due course.
Yes.
I'm wondering if you could share a little bit with our listeners today about the sort of content or the way that you're hoping to structure this. And it just gives a little bit of advanced publicity as well.
I guess. The first thing is I don't even know if I'd get some really good publishers, but I'm writing it anyway. Uh, the book is called like Dandelions. I mean, if we have some time, maybe I could read the first chapter, not the first chapter, the first paragraph. But it's I would like to talk about it. It's that this book reflects like a rethinking of my life. If my life had gone a different path, if a different decision had been made about me, how it would probably have turned out for me. And so this book follows the story of a little girl that whose mom is trusting one, powerful woman in the community to take care of her daughter and help her reach like better heights or greater heights, take her um to Europe to find good work, like legal work, because she says that she can. And she ends up in a whorehouse, really, and is being trafficked. And it's scary, it's fearful for her. She hasn't seen her family, she doesn't know when she's going to see her family. And her family back home is also just thinking about their daughter, what's happening to this girl, what's going on with her. So, yeah, it really follows that life and that line of thinking. And I thank God that that's not how my life turned out, but that's the story of so many other people that are unable to tell that story. So, yeah, that's what I'm writing about.
It sounds like it will be incredibly powerful and for yourself as the author, but also for those people who read it. And it might even start to influence some of those donors and philanthropists and governments to think differently about a broader range of issues that affect young women in particular, and at times women who are already adults who get into the situations that you're talking about. What do you think are your greatest gifts in leadership? You have an incredibly powerful voice already. What do you think are your, top 3 or 4 greatest gifts in leadership
In
right
leadership,
now?
what would they be? I think firstly would be my drive. I think I'm a very driven person, and I'm not only able to carry out what I want or I believe in, but and also like driving the vision of other people. And so if I buy into a vision, I will help you get there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm a very driven person. And secondly, um, I think my ability to laugh also is 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 such an important thing in this tense, stressful world. Your ability to just laugh. And I think I have seen that in the past where I've worked in teams has been really helpful because somebody comes to you and they are stressed about a situation and you make light of it and tell them, hey, calm down, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. I think that is also really helpful and a strong suit for me. Um, Storytelling is also, I think, a powerful leadership tool. The first grant that we got at the Pearl Safe Haven, I had to pitch our idea in front of people and really tell a story of what people should give to us. And funny enough, it was at the Australian High Commission in Ghana. And my ability to tell that story, to convey what we wanted to do in a way that people could understand and could fall in love with and say, hey, I want to support this, was really important and continues to be really crucial even now. That you're able to translate it for people. Because sometimes, like even for me, I could be saying something, but unless someone says something to me about it in a way that I can understand, I really don't get what's going on. So I think that that's also really a powerful and strong suit, um, storytelling. And maybe a fourth one, would be my ability to learn. And in this part of my life, I have learned the most, I would say, from my country representative at the United Nations Population Fund when I was there, Mr. Niyo Jolape. He taught me a lot, and he really made me believe in myself as an individual, as a person, as a professional woman, that I can do a lot, that I should believe in myself. And in our climes where like sometimes older men, you know, just want to take advantage of women and such, it was so refreshing to meet a man that was just primarily interested in empowering young people. So I wasn't even just the only one that benefited from him. There's cohorts of young people that benefited from him. And that I just took that and I've carried that with me. And so my ability to learn, I think, is also a strong, I believe, and I know is a strong suit.
That's important, isn't it? You know, it's not just a maybe, you know that. And that's the power of mentoring, isn't it? And the power of wanting to have a mentor and the power of others to genuinely and authentically mentor us without any strings attached.
Absolutely.
And that's so incredibly important. And I add value to that by saying it's a two-way street mentoring, because if I'm mentoring a younger person, I learn probably more from that person, then I might be able to help with them. So I think it's always a two-way street. I don't ever see it as a one-way street. And that country representative you speak of will have learned heaps from you and the other young people that he has worked with. So I think it's a very powerful story, and the power of storytelling, and that's what we have done today. We're sharing your story with the power to give every other person an opportunity to see what they can be. And that's a great thing. As we move to close our conversation, Akosua, what message would you like to leave with everyone today?
What message would I like to leave with everyone? Firstly, we're talking about remarkable women, or this platform is talking about remarkable women. I think firstly to just appreciate, as a woman, appreciate where you are, appreciate your own story, and know that wherever you are is remarkable in and of itself. Um, it's fabulous to see women doing amazing things and being the huge leaders and all of that, being in the executive space. But even if you are in the marketplace and you are selling goods at the marketplace, you are a remarkable woman. Even if you are at home and you're taking care of the home, you're taking care of your children, that is a remarkable thing to do. So just adore yourself and know that wherever you are at is remarkable. And outside of that, the second thing I'd say is I just hope that everyone would also just work together, and knowing that you are remarkable in yourself, work to make the place a remarkable place, the world to like work to make the world a remarkable place to be in. And wherever you find yourself, if there is a young lady you can mentor, there's somebody you can reach out to speak to, whatever it is. If you see something that you need to say something about, please go ahead and do it, and let your remarkableness be infectious.
Akosua, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you and being in conversation today. I thank you, and Zonta International thanks you.
Thank you too for having me. It was a pleasure speaking with you.